That's early. That's right. That's right. No, that last time I spoke in Shavuos, I spoke in Marta Machpelah. I got like the graveyard shift. I got the 2 to 3 a.m. So it was all right. Okay. No pun intended. I did not intend that pun. I want to start. David asked me for a title, so I came up with Torah Ohr, Torah War. But I just came up with that title. Then I had to fill it in afterwards. All right, it was just the title I came up with, but I liked it because we are in a time of war, and we're going to get to war in just a second. I want to start with a little story for you. The story that mamash happened. This happened about 8 years ago. I was checking out. I was about to leave Mount of Olives, where we were living for 7 years. We were looking for the next place, and we went to check out a neighborhood. I'm not going to say which neighborhood. You'll see in a second why. And it was an auspicious day on the calendar. It was a beautiful place, and I was very excited about it. I was really looking forward to having a great Shabbos. And we go to lunch to these nice people. The wife is very pious. She's very pious. Not a hair showing, and you could see that she's tzenua and Shabbos and the whole thing, and you could see that she's trying to be a frum, a yid, a religious Jew. You could see it on her. Good. The husband, though, something was a shtickle off. I wasn't sure what it was. And he says, and it turns out that he was this, he happened to be Sephardic, because the reason it's important is because he was also a paitan. He knew all the songs. He was also a Baal Kriat, and he was a guy who was a teacher of laning. And the reason it's Sephardi is important is because Sephardi people don't have usually the kind of problem that this guy had, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. It turned out through our conversation that this guy, whose job is to teach Kriya, and he's like a wedding singer, he does paitanut and all that kind of stuff. It turns out that he had started going down the path of kfira. And he started not believing in Torah Shebechtav as a real thing, and he started thinking that it's just junky. And he really stopped believing it. And this is very rare. This is a Sephardi guy who knows the psukim and knows stuff mostly by heart, and he's inside and he's a teacher, but he started going down the road of kfira. This is a real thing that happened. And I mean, first thing, we were there for Shabbos. Now you could see that the wife is so uncomfortable. I mean, this is not what she signed up for. Okay, she signed up for a frum life. You could see it on her, and you could see that when he started talking kfira stuff, she was just like. It was just so, as I think most of us would be as well. But, and I'm trying to check out the neighborhood, you know what I mean? And suddenly I'm at lunch with this dude. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you know what I mean? Where did I land here? I'm looking for a nice, and I'm coming from Malez team on the Mount of Olives, which is like Torani plus, okay? Like super Torani. It's like the most Torani place there is in the country. Like everybody there's a rabbi. It's hardcore. And here's this guy, and he's got problems. So I said to him, with my innocence, I said to him, "No, so what's bothering you so much about Torah?" So he boiled it down to one pasuk. One pasuk was troubling him, and he says to me, "Look at source number 3." Towards the end of Parashat Kitetza, it says, Ki yinatzu anashim yechadav, 2 men are fighting, ish ve'achiv, a man and his brother, ve'karva eshet ha'echad, the wife of one comes, la'atzil et isha, she's coming to save her husband, miyad makeo, from the guy who was hitting him, ve'shalcha yada, she sent out her hand, ve'hechazika b'mevushav, she held on to his embarrassing parts, from the word bosh, bashash, we'll see in a minute, mevushav, probably meaning to say, now this is an old men's event tonight, so we don't have to be overly careful. She held on to his privates, bekitzur. That's what she did. And the Torah then says, the next pasuk, v'katzotet kapa, cut off her hand, lo tachosenecha. Don't look away, cut off her hand. She embarrassed him, she held on to his embarrassing part. And he says to me, this is Torah? He says to me, this is Torah? This is your Torah? This is what the Torah says. It's like, this is worse than Hammurabi. This is, what kind of code of ethics is this? This woman was obviously coming to save her husband, and now you're cutting off her hand. And he says, and don't tell me that it's money. I know the Talmud. I know what the Gemara says about this, because he did know. He says to me, but this is just unacceptable, and therefore, what happened was when this broke in his head, it started a cascade of more and more and more things that bothered him. So I looked at the guy and I said, so what's bothering you is the treatment of this woman, right? He's like, yeah. I said to him, let me ask you just like, you're right. This pasuk is so problematic. Let's ask a few other questions about this pasuk. I said to him, first thing, when do you know that two men are fighting and a woman's like, I'm getting right in there. I'm getting right in that fight. He's fighting, I'm going to get right there. I mean, you see it in the movies sometimes, but like really, Lamaisa, two men are like, decking each other in the face. Women don't usually come between them, am I right? I said to him, he's like, yeah, okay, but it's not like a big question. Then I said, let me ask you this. It says, v'hechazika b'mevushav. It doesn't say, v'taket mevushav. It doesn't say she hit his privates. It says that she held on to him. What kind of thing is this? When do you see a situation where people are fighting and somebody's able to, hold on? What's going on here? And then I said to him, let me ask you yet another question. There is no pasuk in the Torah. There's no tzivah in the Torah to cut off a body part. There's one about making an ear, like making a hole, but that's not cutting off a body part. And everybody knows that this part is meant for earrings. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing. Where in the Torah does it say to cut off a body part? Nowhere. Not one other pasuk in the whole Torah says to cut off a body part as punishment. It's not like Islam. In Islam, if you steal, then you're supposed to cut off the hand, and that's what they do. Okay? No. There's no place in the Torah that says that. I said to him, but now the Torah picks this pasuk, this lady who's getting a fight between two men that are bashing each other in the face, and the Torah picks this pasuk that she's stretching out her hand while these two guys are fighting. She's holding on to his privates. Now cut off her hand. I said to him, does that not say to you, darsheni? Doesn't that say to you something? Think a little deeper, Habibi. This is in front of his wife and kids, and he says to me, okay. he was a little instead of like me like going into the, and if you know my TV stuff, it's the same thing. Instead of like going into like a defensive mode, I'm like, okay, let's go to offense. And it's like the same thing. It's like I said to him, don't you think that this pasuk already says there's more problems with this pasuk? Doesn't it say to you, like, what else? Is there any depth in this? He goes to me, no, so what are you getting at? So it happened to be that I'm a big fan of the Balaturim, and the Balaturim art scroll is an excellent set. I highly recommend it. And they have excellent notes, very good notes. They really did a great job. They took it from another Balaturim book. In any case, they had great notes. And I went to one of the notes at the end of Parshat Kitetse on the story of Amalek, and it has a note that sends you to Midrash Tanchuma. Let's take a look at source number 5. Midrash Tanchuma, Kitetse, in chapter Tet, it says like this. Da'amar Rabba Chama, Bar Shik, V'Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, V'Rabbi Yochanan. I forgot my glasses, by the way. Anybody got glasses? Anybody got reading glasses? I always forget. This is a new thing for me, so it's like hard for me to remember. Thanks. What the heck? Thanks. Okay. No worries. I meant reading glasses. No problem. Okay. So anyway, here we go. Ma'ayu Beit Amalek osim. What would Amalek do to the Jews? Okay, here we go. Hayu mechatchim milotem. They would cut off their privates, the male privates. Shel Yisrael v'zorkim klepei mala. They would take the male member and throw it out to the sky. V'omrim. They would say to God, Kivyachol, bazeh bacharta, tol lecha mashe bacharta. You chose the Jewish people. Here's a part of the Jewish people, or here's the brit. Take what you want. So they were very, very gruesome, brutal. Hamas, ISIS style. But that's what they would do. They would cut off male member and throw it up to the sky. Did you know this? You ever see that? Okay. That's part of the thing.
Rosh says it.
Huh?
Rosh says it.
But it's like it's not something that a lot of people know. So they bring a pasuk. This is a cherpa. This is a great shame. Now, Bashmuel Navi came Samuel the prophet. Uparalem, he gave it back to them. Sheneemar ve'ishasef Shmuel et Agag. Shmuel did something to Agag. What did he do? We may generally understand that he split him down the middle. He cut him down. But no, here it says something different. What is this ve'ishasef? Ma'asalo, Rabbi Abba Bar Kana amar, haya mechatech mebsaro kazayit, u'ma'achlol leneimot. He cut, when he got Agag in his hands, he cut off pieces of him, presumably while he was still alive, and he would give it to the Yanot, means to say the ostriches. He would cut pieces out of him. He gave it back to him. Okay, and they have a pasuk for it. Let's go to the next thing. And shebarar lo mitam hara, he gave him a bitter death. He gave it to him real bad. Rabbi Omer sirso. Rabbi Omer that he did the same thing to him. He cut off his privates first before he killed him. He gave it back to Agag. Dechtiv, ויאמר שאול כאשר שכלה נשים חרבך, כן תשכן מנשים עמך. And the note there, which I didn't bring, says, not imecha, not your mother, but rather your amma, your private. I cut it off so nobody could. Yafa, he gave it back to him. You like that?
That's perfect.
Charles, Baruch Hashem. So he did the same thing to him. I'm a Rabbi Levi. Here we go. This is the important part. Look, I put it in italics. Af Moshe Ramza Israel min Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu gave a hint to this very act of cutting off the enemy's privates back to him. Shneimar, and he gives a pasuk. Ki natzu Hashim yechdav, ish ve'achiv, v'kirva eshet ha'echad, v'katzota et kapa, cut off her hand. Maktiv achav zechor et asher asa lecha HaMelech. The whole pasuk there of the two men fighting is and cutting, and the woman comes in and she does her thing, is a remez bichlal to a few psukim later to this thing of Amalek. And what should you do? You should do. Remember, it says Amalek. Here it says cut off her hand. Don't look away. It's really a remez to Amalek. What's happening? The two men are Jews in the pasuk. The two men are Jews. They're fighting. When Jews fight, Amalek sneaks in. That's the dua. Everybody knows that when Jews are in conflict, then that's when Amalek sneaks in. By the way, Hamas said that one of the main reasons that they felt that they were going to attack is because they saw the infighting of the Jews. So that's the two men are fighting. Now comes the woman. What is this woman of the man? She's not a good woman. She's a bad woman. She's like a Lili. She's like a bad energy woman. In this case, she's Amalek. She's on the side of one of them somehow, and she comes to in this fight to do this, this cutting off of the male member to the Jew like Amalek did. Don't look away. You got to cut off her hand. You got to go back to Amalek, cut off his thing. Don't look away. So it's just a remez to a much deeper thing of what you have to do, and and it's a remez because it's everything that I said now is not exactly stuff you want to print on ink on parchment. So it's all a remez to that's actually what was happening there. And we all know that in this war that we have with Hamas, a lot of that happened. This stuff that we're talking about happened. This is real stuff. When Amalek gets at you, he does horrible things. We know about the horrific sexual brutality that took place on men and women. It's Yadua. The same thing happened, by the way, with the 72 Munich massacre. I don't want to get into it, but if you people that know the history know how they found the bodies of the Jewish athletes. So I said to him, the whole pasuk here is not this pasuk that you think is like now rolling away the whole Torah. This pasuk is there to tell you like beremez what happened in the war of Amalek, and it's something completely different. And I looked at him like, really? I said to him, really? You're gonna let yourself lose all your whole faith because you were weak in researching this pasuk a little bit? Anyway, the guy was like, that was the end. Now, what happened to him, I don't know. But I'd like to think that he had a little bit, because also what happens is we all know, is a big part of kfira is haughtiness. It's haughtiness. You don't have anavav, klapei shmaya. You don't feel a humility, so you start to think that you know better, and that you understand things better, and he was lacking that a little bit. Maybe it came back to him a little bit. But anyway, that's this amazing pasuk. And by the way, I've seen other people. I saw a guy in college also who had this pasuk on his wall. It was a big ha ha ha. Look at the Torah, how crazy it is, how silly it is. And Chazal, by the way, in the Gemara do not explain the way we just explained. They just say, it's about money. But the Chazal is trying to tell you a halachic concept. But if you want to dig deeper, there's other literature that helps you understand this thing a little deeper. Fine. So that's that pasuk. Still, though, it led me down an interesting path. I was wondering this word mevushav. What does this word mevushav mean? Help me out. Mevushav? Translated, huh? His embarrassment, or his embarrassing parts, or his something to do with embarrassment.
Something that makes him embarrassed.
Yes, it makes him embarrassed. Right? This causes him to be embarrassed. Good? Okay. So, slicha. I started looking into this root, and I found that the root Bosh or Bashash appears 3 times in the Torah. I looked it up and I found that it appears 3 times in the Torah. And this led me down a path that we're going to go down today for a little bit. And it's going to be interesting for us, I hope. The first time is it says, look at source 1. Vayushneim arumim. They were both of them were naked. Hadam v'ishto, man and his wife. Velo yitboshashu, and they were not embarrassed. They were not embarrassed. Not embarrassed. What's the next word? I have Rashi, but the next word is right down below. It's hanachash. The next word after velo yitboshashu is hanachash. What is this moment of lo yitboshashu? How would you explain this? They're naked and they were not ashamed. How would you characterize that moment?
They were so connected to their soul, their physicality.
Right, good, very good. Innocent, whole, tamim, pure. Really, in some ways, it's the apex of humanity. They were in the Garden of Eden. They were naked. That means they didn't have any armumiyut, which is what the nachash. They had no shame. No armumiyut. I mean, no conniving, no trickery, no cleverness. They were like pure and simple. And it was, in fact, it was a perfect moment of humanity, one of the apexes of humanity. You'll see why that's important in a second. And the next word is v'hanachash. They were in a perfect state. Comes this thing, this nachash, and he's going to mess it all up. And he's going to take away that shamelessness, that simplicity. V'lo yitboshashu. They had no shame. They have nothing to be ashamed about. Nachash is going to make them ashamed about stuff, right? Okay. The second place that we find this is Vayar in Parshat Kitisa. Now in Sefer Shmot, we're talking about Matan Torah. Okay, Matan Torah. The Am is standing at the bottom of the mountain. They're there for 40 days. They're being a little yekkish. They're being a little uptight about the time. Okay, and they see that Moshe Rabbeinu is not coming down. Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet min hahar. What do they see? That he's embarrassed to come down, meaning to say, he's actually embarrassed of them. They're kind of low. He's in the high place. Wow. He's up there. We're down here. And actually, we've got these Yetzers inside. He's a holy man on top of the mountain. He's with God. And we're just we're the folks, and we're tired of waiting 40 days and 1 minute. We're tired. So he's embarrassed to come down. Maybe that's what they think. It doesn't say that really he was boshesh. That's how they saw it. Maybe he's embarrassed of us. And what happens immediately after that boshesh? And what happens? That's chet ha'egel. Okay? So the boshesh here is Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Rabbeinu is on another pinnacle of mankind. What is the ultimate that a man can reach? Closeness to Hashem. Ayin b'ayin. That's the highest form of the whole thing. The highest form of any human achievement is to be close to God, and the closer to God is the higher achievement. So the first v'lo yitboshashu is they're in the Garden of Eden, and they're really close to God. The nachash steps in. The second one is that there's this one man who climbs a mountain, and he's the pinnacle of the Jewish people, and he's got the purity and the ability to stand there. He's standing there receiving Torah. He's about to bring it down. There's that bashash, and then they go the other way. Who messed them up there? The first one, who messed up the Adam v'Chava? Nachash. Who messed them up in Matan Torah?
The nation.
The Satan. It says that. Here's Rashi. Ba Satan v'irbev et haolam. ויראה דמות חושך ואפלה ורבוביה. לומר ודאי מת משה, לכך בא רבוביה לעולם, אמר להם מת משה. And the other version there is that they saw the mitah of Moshe. Who sent that death mitah of Moshe? That's the Satan. So the first bad guy is the Nachash. That's a bad element. The second bad guy is the Satan. Both are pinnacles of mankind. Adam and Eve. I feel like in our Sukkah here we're a little bit in Gan Eden, right? I want to take off my clothes, but it's cold. It's like Garden of Eden. And the second one is Moshe. That's also the Garden of Eden. That's the highest form. Moshe Rabbeinu. Holy cow, he's about to come down to the 10 Commandments. He's with God. He hasn't eaten or drank in 40 days. It's unbelievable. But something comes and messes it up.
What's amazing is that in both cases, to be Boshash is a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing you didn't say the tamim. You said the bashash. Nowadays
That's right. You know what? We'll get to let's go back to that at the very end. We'll ask why this term is the term used for this. Okay, so wait. So we have these two pinnacles. We have these two pinnacles of humanity, messed up by these dark forces. One is the Satan. One is the Nachash. Now is the Satan. So now maybe that could help us understand the bashash that we're talking about in our pasuk. What is, if the first bad guy is the Nachash, and the second bad guy is the Satan, what's the third bad guy, and what's the third highest pinnacle of human achievement? Well, the answer is that Amalek is all about stopping the Jewish people from coming to the land of Israel. He's all about that. Just like the Nachash wanted to mess up Adam and Chava for his reasons and his jealousies, and just like the Satan didn't want the Torah to come down to this world, Amalek has got one big problem. When does Amalek have power? Excuse me. When does he become disempowered? Let's take a look at number 4. This Balaturim is the connection between right after Kitetza Milchama, the parsha. It starts with Kitavo. The very end of Kitetza is Amalek, right? That's the very end of Kitetza, and the very beginning is Kitavo La'aretz. Says the Balaturim. Ktiv le'el minei. It says beforehand Timched Zechar Amalek. Usamichle. This thing that I'm about to read to you is like, I think, a foundational Torah concept. If you remember anything from tonight's talk, then remember this part, because this is actually a very important understanding, because of the people here in this Sukkah are people that have come to the land of Israel, and you'll understand all the challenges now that you're facing through this Balaturim. It says, Ktiv le'el minei timched zecher Amalek. It says before, in the last parsha, it ended with timched zecher Amalek. Usmichle vayaki tavo la'aretz. And it says here in this parsha, so he connects the two parshas when you come into the land. What's the connection? The only time that you have the power to destroy Amalek is when you come to the land of Israel. And when you come to the land of Israel, that is when you can destroy Amalek. That is what the Baal Term says, and you can find it in Hasidic writings as well, that the destruction of Amalek, and the pasuk says it straight out, when you come into the land of Israel, you can destroy Amalek. He says, he wanted to stop the Jewish people from coming to the land of Israel. It was Amalek who whispered in Paro's ear that Am Yisrael ran away. And he adds a crazy thing. He says he told Lavan that Yaakov is running away. The thing that Amalek needs to stop in this world is the Jewish people coming back to the land of Israel. That is his great concern. When he saw that Paro, as we talked about in the last talk, did not achieve stopping the Jewish people from coming to the land of Israel, then he attacked himself. The truth is, Amalek likes to be in the shadows. He's a shadow worker. He whispers in other leaders' ears. He actually is also I found a lot of sources talk about him being a shapeshifter. They could change into a lot of stuff. He doesn't like to come out frontally. He dresses in the clothes of the Knaanim. He's got all kinds of ways to work. He likes to work in tricky ways. He's what the Russians call maskarovka, which is tricky warfare, okay? But he realized that the Jewish people are coming to the land of Israel. He's got to stop it. As the Jewish people come to the land of Israel, you could hear a shriek of Amalek. Just in parentheses, totally in parentheses, look at the very end of that Balaturim. He says, Tavo otiot avot. Ki tavo, as you come to the land, it's going to be the letters of the forefathers. V'zeu shedarshu begida nashe she'ein be'eretz Yisrael pachot milam tzadikim shechashuvim ki avot. There's always 30 tzadikim in the land of Israel that are valuable like the avot. That's just in parentheses, just so you know that. The Balaturim loves the avot v'imahot. He's always finding the avot that's his preoccupation. He's always finding the forefathers in the psukim. In any case, my point to you is this. We have 3 bashashes in the Torah. They all represent the highest pinnacle of mankind that can be attained. The reason I say mankind, not Jews, is because the first grouping is one of Adam v'Chava. They were about to reach a pinnacle, comes the Nachash. The next pinnacle is Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, comes the Satan. And the last pinnacle is the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. As the Kabbalistic sources say, that's really the Garden of Eden. That's the return of the Jewish people to Eretz Israel is the return of Adam and Chava to the Garden of Eden. It is a tikkun of all that was broken. And who needs to stop that? The third dark force, which is Amalek. And so we have these three pinnacles, three dark forces, and now we also understand what is the problem of Amalek. We also understand much better this weird pasuk about the woman and the hand and this whole business. We help that guy get over his kfira. So why the word? Let's finish up here, and I'll tell you one last story. First thing is we learn from that pasuk that a big problem towards Geula is infighting amongst the Jewish people. That's the big chiddush. Ki and Atzui Shechdav. They fought together. That's when Amalek came. That is a weakness. And you know what? I thought to myself, am I working so much for Achdus? Like, it's not easy. It's really not easy. And there's also Erev Rav, and there's problems. You've got to fight that Erev Rav. And it's not really easy to have Ahavat Yisrael, but that pasuk teaches us that if you want to stay from that third dark force, which is Amalek, you got to try to find a way not to fight with the Jewish people and to have Achdut. So that's number one. Number two is something you started saying, which is, but why is these letters Bashash or Bush? Why are they the letters that indicate a potential geula and downfall? By the way, the Christians, the Hafti Elef, they have a good term for this, which is fall from grace, right? It's like there's and you're fall from grace. Sometimes they have a useful language a little bit, but in any case, that's what we have in two of these. And Mizrat Hashem, by the way, there's a tikkun for the second one, right? There's the second luchot, and to the land of Israel, there's a tikkun, right? There's a tikkun in our time. Why Bashash? Maybe what you said is right. Maybe that this is something that we should not. How would you say it? How would you say it?
The only way I would explain it is just like in the Torah, the word chesed has one meaning, going beyond boundaries, and you can go beyond boundaries for good, and you can go beyond boundaries for bad.
Okay. No, and therefore Bashash.
Bashash, you can have that embarrassment, which is more of an makom anavav, makom snua, or you can have it from makom of going out and doing it to someone else and causing them rather than you having it within yourself.
Good. Okay, and maybe we should have shame about our divisiveness. Maybe we should have a certain shame about what we did at Egel Zahav. Maybe we should have a certain shame at Chet Adam Harishon. Like it's something to be like it's a shame, and the opposite is like veloid bashashu, right? The loid bashashu, like in a pure form, we won't have that. We'll have this. We'll live a life of godliness. We won't need that shame. Any other thoughts about that, Bashash?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Saying that I understand the concept of bringing everybody here, so that's how you killed Amalek. But how come we didn't do it by Bayit Rishon with Shlomo? Shlomo HaMelech, everybody was there before he sent people out. Yeah. Why didn't he do it?
First thing is he kind of did.
Why?
Right? Remember, we did David HaMelech and company. They really do get rid of the Plishtim. They really do get rid of the seven nations.
Not Amalek. Amalek's not Plishtim. We're talking specifically Amalek.
Right. Amalek is a tricky character. And
I agree.
No, he's very tricky. And by the way, we also.
It was not always found.
That's right. He's mamash a shapeshifter. Baal Turim says that also. He changed. That's why we're commanded to kill the sheep and the animals because they turn into animals.
Baal Turim says Amalek is gematria safek.
Right. Right.
They put a safek in you.
They put a safek in you.
And how do you get out of the safek? Asa lecha rav, keneged zecher asa lecha amalek. It's Rabbi Mansour. He
right?
The two.
Rabbi Mansour.
Yeah, he
connected
the best.
The two. And another way, by the way, how do you defeat Amalek? Ein simcha ela hataras sveikas. Ein simcha ela hataras svekot. So when you can get rid of the safek, then you have simcha. That's Purim. When you get rid of the guy who brought the safek, which is Amalek, then you have real simcha. Like it releases a great.
And then you have the basar and yain and sichar basar yain. Also.
Yafeh? No.
What if we take Bashash and we just use Amalek's whole method and say it's Bashish? It's Yom Shishi. We're Erev Shabbat.
Right.
We're into Shabbat. Shabbat Shabbaton. Saying to him, you want to make us look at this and say, this is our downfall. This is the beginning of the end for us. This is our ultimate ending. And we're heading into Shvi. It's not Bashesh.
Love it.
That-
And that is, by the way, your
That's
Bashesh.
Rashi.
That's Rashi on the second source, which is like the 6th hour. They got confused about which hour he's supposed to come back. But you're saying
Because that's pure Amalek. That Amalek tries to take our own methodology and our thinking and flip it around on us, but we can flip it back on him and say, you don't know what you're talking about. You're trying to play our game. We know how to play it better.
By the way, another thing which is his tactic that we have to flip on him is obviously he's into sexual impurity.
Right.
That's a big part of this whole thing. And in our like channeling energy in a proper fashion, in a proper way, that's the TIKKUN for this thing that he did with the Mila. All right, let me finish up with one last story that I found for you about Hoshana Rabbah. It's a Baal Shem Tov story. I found it in Siprei Chasidim of Rav Zevin, and it goes like this. One time, the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov it was approaching Rosh Hashanah, and one Talmud dropped his shmek tabak, his tobacco box in the middle of tefillah, and he bent down to get it in the middle of tefillah. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Good. So this other Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov saw this, and he had a kapeda on him. He thought a negative thought about him. He's like, I can't believe this guy is so into Gashmias. And he had a real kapeda on him. And the Baal Shem Tov saw that the guy who dropped the tobacco box was going to get in trouble in heaven and was not going to live out the year. Because this other guy had a kapeda on him. So the Baal Shem Tov went up to Shemaim in his nightly tours of the heavenly spheres. And there is, by the way, a whole literature of what heaven looks like. What are the Batei Dinim, what it looks like. It's called Sifrut HaUlamot. There's a whole Torah about what's going on up there. So he goes up there, and he makes a case, and they say to him, sorry, the only way that you're going to get this guy back into good stead is if the guy who had the kapeda on him, who thought negative thoughts about him, is going to change his mind himself. That's the only way. So it was Hoshana Rabbah night, and the bacher who had the negative thoughts about the guy who dropped the box was learning at night the Seder of Hoshana Rabbah, the TIKKUN of Hoshana Rabbah, and the Baal Shem Tov walked past him and he took his mochen. He confounded him. He just walked past him, did this thing. It's like, these are not the droids you're looking for. It's like you got all confused. And the guy stood up and he was just like all confused and he just was pacing back and forth. He couldn't concentrate on anything. And then suddenly he started thinking about tobacco. And he's like, there's like neshamot in this world, he starts thinking to himself, that like Hashem grows these grasses and these plants, and these neshamot need some kind of physical way to connect to this world. And he's like, this tabak is like some way that some neshamot have a way to plug into this world. And in fact, through the smell, it's a very high level. And he started thinking all these deep thoughts. And he's like, he thinks to himself, Kanireh, this thought that I had about this my friend of mine, he's one of these neshamot that has a way of plugging into this world through these plant-based things and through the smells. And he's actually, maybe he had a high level and I didn't see it. And he thought a good thought about his friend. And then his mochen came back to me, finished up the rest of the learning. The next day, Hoshana Rabbah Day, the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov used to come to the Baal Shem Tov and he would tell them everything about like what was and what will be, or like what they needed to hear. It was like a custom that on Hoshana Rabbah Day you would get like
nuggets.
But you would come from the Rebbe one by one, and he would give you the spiel. He would look at you and give you the spiel. So this Talmud came and he said, and the Baal Shem Tov told him, like, your friend was going to get whacked. And your changing of the mind saved him, and that was an important thing that you did. What we learn through this story is that Hoshana Rabbah is about judgment, and the most important thing is to have good judgments for one another. It's easy to get annoyed in shul. I get annoyed in shul. It's easy to get annoyed in shul. It's easy to get annoyed about parking. It's easy to get annoyed about a lot of your neighbor with a leak that's coming into your house. There's a million ways to get really ticked off. And I'm talking to myself just like I'm talking to you. And Hoshana Rabbah is a night to try to forgive our friends, to have a good thought about our friends. I'm doing it right now. And to therefore get a tikkun for this world. And as we learned, that's a great way to ward off Amalek. And we'll have the completion of coming to Eretz Yisrael, destroying Amalek, and having that purity and having that consciousness of channeling God into this world. And we'll really do Garden of Eden, Gan Eden. We'll really do Kabbalat Torah, and we'll really come to Eretz Yisrael and light up this world. Amen.
Learning using a Sukkah. Just a very technical thing. It's possible.
Really, by the way,
I'm just going in. It's possible that